Hello everyone. In today's tutorial, we are going to demonstrate how to connect a Codesys application to a database for persistent data storage. So we shall demonstrate how to connect to a database, how to store and retrieve data from the database. So for this demonstration, I'm using a Raspberry Pi 3B that is running Codesys control for Raspberry Pi and a MySQL database. So here is a brief overview of the setup that we have. So like we said, we are using a Raspberry Pi as our controller. So from the image on the left here, we have the controller. And then on the right, we have our database environment. So we are going to run our database in a Docker container that is running on a separate PC. In this case, I'm using a Windows PC where I've installed Docker, and then I can run Docker containers on that PC. So that is kind of the setup that we have over here. So as a start, we are going to first set up our database environment, and then later we shall switch to the Codesys side and set up our database client from there, and then later establish connection and be able to save data and retrieve data. So let's start with the database side and then continue from there. So since we are running our database in a container, we should identify the image that we want to use. So if you go to Docker Hub here, there is this MySQL Docker official image. So this is the one that we shall be using to set up our database. So before I even pull this image from Docker Hub, I will first create an SQL script that we shall use to create our database. So I will come here. I think I want to add a folder here and call it database. And then inside this folder, I'm going to create a new file. Then I'll call it database.sql. And then here I'm going to write a query to create the database that we need. So the first thing that I want to do is create a database. So I'll use the create database query, and I'll call the database DB. So that's the name of our database. And then I'll use DB. And then, I'll create a table. So I'll say create table, and I'll call this data. Then I'll specify the different fields for this table. So I want an entry ID. So entry ID, this is an auto increment field. So I'll say int. That's the type. It's not null because we don't want it to ever be null. And it's auto increment. And this is, again, our primary key for that particular table. And then I'll create just two extra fields. For example, I can have a sensor data one. So sensor underscore data one, underscore one. So assuming that we're going to store sensor data in this table. And this is of type int, or I can make it a float. And then it's also not null. And then we can also have sensor data too. It's a float as well, not null. And I think that's the structure of our table there. That should do it for us. Now, this script is going to run at startup. So when I create the container from the image, this script should run. So the script will create a database, then it will create a table. And what I want also to do, I want it to say to insert some data into the table, some preliminary data like a field into, like a record into the table. So I'll use the insert into query. So insert into data. and then I specify the fields. So I want to insert into sensor data 1, and then sensor data 2 there. And then I'll specify the values that I want to be inserted for each of the two fields. So I'll insert something like 12.5, and then I'll insert also like something like 90. And that should do it for us. So we shall insert some more statements in this script here. But first, let's pull our image from Docker Hub, and then we shall see what else we need to add in this script. So go back here. This is Docker Hub here. This is the MySQL image. So this is the best image that we're going to use in this setup. So we are going to pull this image, but we want to customize it a little bit. So we want to, for example, insert our script there into the image so that it can run when we create the container. And also we want to do some configurations like setting usernames and passwords and everything. So we use this as the base image, and then we build our new image around this. So that is how it should happen. So to do that, we need a Docker file. So I'll create another file here. So this is Docker file. Supposed to be Docker file, yes, there. And in here now we put those statements. First of all, we want to put the image, and then we want to place our script into the correct location so that it can run when we create the container, and also set some environmental variables as well. So first statement here is to specify which image we want to use. So we use the from statement, and then I'm using MySQL, and then I'll specify so MySQL underscore dash server. Then here specify the version. So I'm using version 5.7. I tried some later versions, but they're a little bit tricky. They need some more configuration when it comes to security. When you try to connect to the database, you need to adapt it a little bit. But I tested with this 5.7 version, and it worked without a lot of effort. So I'll keep it at this. And then the other thing we want to do is now we want to copy this script into the directory where it will run when we create the container. That directory is called the Docker entry point initdb. So I use the copy command here. Then I want to copy this script here so it's in the same directory as the Docker file. So /database.sql. Then I want to copy that into the Docker dash entry point dash initdb.d. So that is the directory in the image where we should have this script. So if this script is in that directory, then it will be run. Oh, this is supposed to be db. It will be run automatically when we create the container. So we want to do that. So we copy this script into the Docker entry point initdb directory there. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to set the password for this SQL server. So I will set this environment variable called MySQL underscore root underscore password, and I'll give it the password that I want to use. So I want to use the password as root there. So what we've done here, we specify the image we want to pull from Docker Hub here with the version there. Then we copied our database.sql, which contains our statements to create for us the database, and we've copied it into the Docker dash entry point dash initdb directory. So it will be run automatically when we create a container from this image. And that is it for this Docker file. So basically, we are going to create our own image. So this is our customized image from the official image here. And then from that image, then we shall create a container in which our database will run. One more thing that we want to do we want to come back here. So after our database has been created, we want to assign So first here, create database, we create a table, we insert some data, we grant privileges to user root here, identified by this password here, and then we flash privileges, and that should do it for us. Okay. Save this. Now we are ready to build our image. So I'll set up a terminal here. And now to build this image from this Docker file, so I should be in the same directory as the Docker file. So I'm not there, so I'll cd into database. Okay, now we're in database there, so we can see our Docker file here. And now we run docker build -t. We specify the image name that we want. So the name of the image that is going to be created from this base image. So I'll call that MySQL DB. That's the image name that I want. And then the location or the directory where the Docker file is. So it's the same directory where we are. And then click enter. And then it should start building this image. Okay, now our image has been built. If we run docker image ls, we should be able to see, alongside the images that I do have, should be able to see our new built image over here. And actually, if you have Docker desktop, you should also be able to see, so if I open Docker desktop here, you should be able to see your image and images. So there you are. Now we can comfortably create a container from this image, and then our database will be running in that container. So to create a container, we are going to use a Docker Compose file. So we shall create a new file here. So new file, docker-compose. That's YML. And then in here now we put our statements to create a container from the image we just built. So first statement is the service. So you define the service, give it a name. So I'll call it MySQL. That is the service name. And then under that, first we specify the image from which we want to create the container. So image is this guy here. Okay, that's our image. Container name. So container underscore name. That is the name we want to give to this container that we're going to create. So this, I'm going to call it Codesys DB. And then we want to restart. So if the container fails, it should restart or raise. If it fails for some reason, then it should be able to restart. So that's what that statement means. So Now, remember this container is running, rather this database is running in a container. The container is running on our computer. So the Codesys application will be connecting to the computer. So we want to connect to the database through the computer. So that means that for us to access the database port from the container, we have to map that port to some port on our computer. So that's what we're going to do here. So we shall say ports. And then here we map the different ports that so you can map multiple ports. For example, if your container is running multiple services on different ports, then you would map all those ports to the ports on your computer. But we are only interested in just one port, and that is the 3306, which is the MySQL database port. So we map 3306 of the container to 3306 of the computer. And then we also expose this 3306 so that we can access it. And that should do it for us. So we expose the port so that we can access it outside the container. So that is what this one is doing here. And then maybe the last part here is we need, because if you want to store persistent data, then you need to store it permanently on the hard drive. So we need to create a volume. So we shall say volume and volumes, and we shall create one volume here. So I'll call this Codesys DB, and that will map to /var/lib/MySQL inside the container. So this volume will be created on our computer, but it maps to this directory inside the container. So if you stop the container and run it again, then the persistent data would still be stored in this volume here on the hard disk. So when you stop the container and run it again, you don't lose all your information. So that information is stored persistently in this volume on the hard drive of the computer there. And then later we shall come here and define our volumes. And then we have one volume, which is this. And that should do it for us. So what have we done? We've defined a service here. We've defined the image we want to create the container from. We defined the container name there. We've defined some few other properties here. The ports, we've mapped the container port to a port on our computer, and then we've exposed that port so that we can access it outside the container. And then we've created one volume here for persistent data storage, and then we've mapped that volume to this var/lib MySQL directory inside the container. And that should do it for us. Then I'll save this, and now I think we are ready to create our container. So all we have to do is, again, it should be in the directory where you have the Docker Compose file. And then, so if I do ls one more time, now we see that we are in that directory there. Now all we have to do is to run Docker Compose. So Docker Compose app, and then -d. The -d flag is for detached, so that's what we want to do. And then it should start creating our container from the image that we have. Okay, one typo here. This should have been services, so I'll correct that. Save, and then run again. Okay, now if I run a Docker Compose again, so Docker Compose app -d. Now it should pull the image, rather it should take our image, create a container from that, and also create for us a volume. Now if we run Docker PS, we can see that we have one container running. So it's created from this image, entry point there, and then the container name is this one, which matches what we specified here. And then if I run also Docker volume ls, we should see our volume that we specified over here. And also if we go to our Docker desktop, we look under containers, you can see that under this database. So this is the folder where we have our files, Docker file and the Docker Compose file. Under that, we have this container here. So you can see its name is Codesys DB, and the image from which it's created, and the ports that are mapped there, and you can see that it's in running state. So if you look at the image volumes, rather, you could see that again the prefix here is the folder where you have all those Docker file and Docker Compose files, but the name we specified is this Codesys DB, and basically that's it. That's what we have. And now we can also check and make sure that our database was successfully created. So if I clear here, Docker PS, so we know our container name there. So I can run docker exec. I specify the container name. So the container name is Codesys DB. And then I bash into that. So /bin/bin/bash. And now I'm inside the container now. Now to access the MySQL command line inside the container, all I need to do is run this MySQL command. Then I specify the password for the server. So I just use the -p flag, and then I put the password. So MySQL -p and then password. And now I'm in the MySQL server command line there. Now I can run a few commands. So for example, I can show databases. Okay, sorry, my bad. So show databases should be like that. And then you can see that we have all the databases. So these were there by default, but the one we created is this DB there. Okay, I can run another command to see the tables that are created inside this database. So all I need to do is I say use DB. So I specify the database that I want to check out. And then now I can say show tables. And then you can see that inside that database, we have this data table there. Now I can query the data inside this table to see what we have there. Remember, we created some default data when we were creating the database itself. So we should see at least one record in there. So I'll run a select command, select query. So select all from data. And as you can see, we have one entry there with the data that we specified at creation. So this tells us that everything is okay. Our database was created correctly, our table created, and we actually even inserted some data into that table. So now our database is ready for action. Now we are going to switch to the Codesys side and try to connect to this database. So we are going to attempt to connect to that database from the Codesys application. But first, we need a library that we shall use to connect to that database. And if you go to the Codesys store and look for this MySQL Library SL. So this library is used to connect Codesys applications to MySQL databases in particular. So you can see that this library is not free. It's 100 euros, the license. So you can get the license using the, rather you can get an application-based license. So it costs you 100 euros. But the beauty about this actually is that there is a demo license. So you can use it without a license for 30 minutes for testing and development. So you really don't need to buy it right away. You can use it in demo mode. It will run for 30 minutes and then it will stop, and then you can restart your runtime and then it will run for another 30 minutes, stop, and then you can keep on rerunning it. And then when you feel that you really need it, then you can buy the license for 100 euros. So all you need to do is go to the Codesys store, log in, If you don't have an account already, create the account, log in, and then download the library from here. It's quite simple. And then when you're done downloading it, so I can download it from here. I think I need to log in back. Okay, I send out. I need to send in back. But I've already downloaded this. I don't need to download it again. I've downloaded it. I've installed it, and now I can jump right away into the coding. So after downloading the library and installing it, you go to your library manager. You add the library. It's right there. And we can look at a few function blocks that we really want to work with this library. So when you go under the function blocks here, under public, we have a couple of libraries that we can use. So in this tutorial, at least, we're going to work with these open and close function blocks. And then we shall also see this connection string function block. So let's go in our program, first of all, and create one instance of each. So we're going to create an instance of this close function block, this connection string function block, and this open function block. So I'll come here and say FB MySQL open first, and that is this block right here. Yeah, so this is of type MySQL.open. Then I'll create another instance, which is FB MySQL close, and this is of type, again, close, MySQL underscore close. And then the other one is FB MySQL con, and it's of type MySQL underscore connection string. So to open a connection with the database, we are going to use this MySQL open. So when the connection is successfully opened, the connection information is stored in this MySQL connection string. So that means to run any queries, you would need this block here. You would need the connection information to the database. And then to close, we use this MySQL close function block. So let's start to set them up and see how it will happen. So I will create a new action here, and I'll use continuous function chat. And this is SQL actions. And then we can basically create our blocks in here. So we can leave this in ST, and then we define these blocks in the SQL actions here using continuous function chat, because it's easier that to working with function blocks. So first I'll go in here, and then I want to add a box. So I'll first define this open function block. So this box is of type MySQL underscore open, and the name for this, I have it already here. That's the name. And now we can see the structure of this function block. So you see that we have some inputs and outputs, and then we have some in-outs as well. So let's connect those, and then later we shall define the variables as needed. So first we have the host there. That's the IP address where the server is running. For our case, that is the IP address of our computer, because we access our server running on inside a Docker container that is running on our computer. So that is how we access it. So we access it via our computer. So we have the host there. We have the port, which is 3306. We've defined that already. We have our database, the name there. We have the username and the passwords. And this start is used to trigger the opening of the connection to the database. And then this MySQL connection is this block here. Actually, you can fill this in already. When the connection is successfully established with the database, then the connection information is stored inside this block there. Then the outputs, we have the connection state. We can know whether it's connected or not. And then we have some errors here. For example, if something happens, then you can look at the error number and then determine what the issue is. But let's go ahead and find these variables here. So there we have them. We have the start. We shall, actually, we should use the open, I guess. So open, close, IP address is our host there, port, username, password, and database. So let's go ahead and fill those in. So we have the IP address there. We have the UI port. We have the S database. We have the, what did I call it? S username. We have the, just copy it directly. So it's database. We have the username there, password, and then we have to trigger the opening of the connection, we shall use this open variable there. And then the connection state, so we have X connected is of type bool. That should tell us. And then we have the error. That is of type error there. Then we can connect these two as well. So connected and then E error there. And that should do it for us, I think. So that is our open block. Then we can also define our close block. So I'll go ahead and take another box. And then I will specify the type. So this is the type. And then I can specify the instance name as well. We have that already here. There we have it. And then the start is what triggers for you to close the connection. So I'll go ahead. I have this X close already defined here. So I'll put an input. There. And then we also need this con, because remember we said this stores our connection information. So we need that information to close the connection. So I'll connect that as well. And then we can also connect the error and execute, but those are not really so important. That is what is most important here. So now I can come here and call this action inside our main program unit here. So I'll just say SQL actions. Right? And that should do it for us. Now we should be able to define these variables, and then we should be able to connect to the database. So I'll go ahead and define the IP address first. So the IP address, I can get it from the command here. Remember we said this is the IP address of the computer where the container is running. So if I run ipconfig, and it should be there, 192.168.138. So it's a string, so 192.168.138. The port, we said it's 3306. The username, we said that was root. The password as well was root. And then the database name was DB. And that's it. That's all we need. Okay, save this and try to generate code. Make sure we have no errors. Now the next part is to upload our program and test it out, test that we can connect to the database and then disconnect from the database. So I need to make sure first that the runtime on my Raspberry Pi is running. So I'll pull up this deploy Codesys SL tool. I will put the username, password, and try to connect to the runtime. Okay, taking some time. Okay, we have a connection. We go under operation. You can see that the runtime is stopped. So we select that and then we start it. So start selected. Okay, we're in running state now. So now we are able to upload our program. So I'll go to device here, communication settings, scan network, find my Raspberry Pi there, click OK. And then now we can go ahead and upload our program. So I'll just click on login. Okay, download latest code. Okay, code has uploaded, put it in run. Okay, now it's running. And now if we go to our actions here, now all we need to do now is to set this open to true. Come here, set it to true. And then if we come here, we should see that now we are connected. And then to disconnect, we set this close to true as well. And now we are disconnected. To connect again, open to true. Now we're connected to the database, and then to disconnect, just set the close to true, and then we should disconnect to the database. So that's a successful attempt. And I think I'll stop this here, and then I will continue in the following video to demonstrate now how to save data to the database first, and then later how to retrieve the data from the database. But this is looking really good. We are able to establish connection to the database, and then we are also able to disconnect successfully. Okay, so thank you and have a nice